Hello and welcome to Dad's Do Dinner with me, Chris Zackley. You're very welcome again and thank you for joining us. As you can see, I am sporting my glasses today and that's because we're going to be doing a very serious dinner, a very grown-up dinner, and hopefully one that you'll all enjoy. And so today's recipe is going to be a really nice yummy sausage casserole, which I'm very excited about cooking because I do love me a juicy banger. So let's have a look and crack on with our dinner. Shall we have a look down here? So these are the ingredients that we have today. So the first thing I've treated my family to is a lovely tray of sausages. Please don't be scared. They don't have to be homemade from the butchers. I've just decided to splash out for the purposes of this particular video. If you want to go and get a pack of 10 Richmond, not the cigarette, that is the actual sausage, you go ahead. The same result will be ultimately achieved for your sausage casserole. So I'm going to put these to one side for 1 second while I just explain the rest of the ingredients. We have some pre-done chopped onions and chopped up carrots. I would suggest that you do 1 carrot per person and 1 large onion if you're feeding a family of 3 or 4. That should be plenty. And I've also prepared some chopped red cabbage. It doesn't have to be red, but I really think that the cabbage goes well as an accompaniment to this dinner. So I've got some red cabbage, and I did a homemade coleslaw over the weekend and I had nothing else to do with it, so there we go, it's going in the dinner. Right, what else have we got here? We've got some mushrooms that we're going to chop up in a bit. We've got some of my famous garlic paste. As you all know, I hate crushing garlic. Got some salt, smoked paprika, and then we've got some really important ingredients for the actual casserole itself, but I'm going to do that separately while we get our sausages on. So if you follow me, we're going to get our sausages browning. The idea of this particular exercise is to give the sausage some colour. It is not to cook them. The whole dinner will be going in the oven, and so really honestly this is something you don't need to panic about. Just put your pan on a half heat like I've done. So I've done number 3, which is a half heat for us on our designer cooker. Thank you so much for your lovely comments. We actually had a guest over as well at the weekend, and he was totally taken aback by our, well, how did he pronounce it? Tricity Tiara. So it's now our oven's official name. I've just about got enough room to shove these sausages in. I hope you can see that there. And literally the purpose of this now is just to give them some colour, because when people are eating sausages, even though they would be cooked absolutely fine in the casserole dish during their time in the oven, people don't like the fact that they can be a grey colour pork when they come out the oven. So we're just going to brown them off a little bit, and while they are on the go on the mid-heat, I can start to show you what I'm going to do with the other stuff. So I said before that we had some other ingredients, so we'll go through those in a sec. I just need to get the other bits prepared, so I'm just going to drag over my chopping board which I prepared earlier. Let's get some mushrooms on the go, because I suspect that we'll be able to use some of the fat that comes out of the sausages as they're browning and give those a little bit of a once through in the frying pan. If I don't get that chance, it's not a problem, they can just go straight in the casserole, but I'm going to try and be clever and get some of that really nice sausage fat soaked up into the mushrooms. I'm using really nice large flat portobello mushrooms. You want to just pick up your normal punnet mushrooms, then go ahead. If you're not using mushrooms, not a problem, it won't spoil the dinner in any way, but this particular recipe, it does add a really nice texture when you're using mushrooms in this dinner. I'm going to finish cutting these up now, and then I'm going to ask my lovely glamorous assistant if she'll just move ever so slightly out of the way so I can grab my tongs, which are there. So can you see how the sausage has changed colour slightly? So this is literally the only exercise that we're doing. It's just to colour the sausages, nothing more. And so that after they've been in the casserole, people just like a darker brown colour to their sausages rather than just being, in for want of a better phrase, either braised or boiled, because pork can look quite depressed when it's cooked. So literally all we're doing is we're browning them off, so no stress, you do not have to worry about cooking these. The cooking will come in the casserole, as it were. So just make sure they're nicely coloured on each side, and then we're going to switch this pan off and let the sausages do their thing in the oven a little bit later. Okay, so once we've chopped up our mushrooms, get those set aside. They will soak up some of the lovely juices, hopefully, that we're preparing. And then the very last thing for our sort of, I guess, our vegetable-ish ingredients. I don't know what you call those. Are they dry ingredients? I guess so. I've bought some fresh tarragon today. We've bought this from Chmesco, but you can get tarragon from most supermarkets and local convenience stores. You can use dry tarragon. I mentioned it in like my first video. I think it's a completely undersung hero. Tarragon is so yummy. It's when you smell dry tarragon, it's like cream and a bit of aniseed, and just gorgeous, and it goes so well in a sausage casserole, and particularly mine, so we're definitely putting it in. So I'm going to chop a bit up now. I'm actually going to save a bit of the tarragon, and you might think, why on earth am I saving it? It's because I want to decorate our main meal when it's done, because when the photos go up on our Facebook page later, it'll look really nice and pretty. I'm going to use all the tarragon for this particular recipe, and this is a 30-gram bag. If you're using dry tarragon, not a problem. I would suggest you use 2 heaped dessert spoons out of your kitchen drawer, and that should be absolutely plenty. Using fresh tarragon, I want you to really chop it up quite nice and finely. We don't want it to be too overpowering, but as you chop this up, honestly, you just start to smell some incredible aromas. And tarragon, honestly, hang on, am I geeking out again? I'm sorry. Yes, I'm being nodded at. It's just really good. So if you aren't used to using anything other than basil and parsley, get used to using tarragon. It's amazing. We're going to be using tarragon in some other dishes in the series, but for this one, any pork dish, any sausage dish, most supermarkets use packaging that sort of preempts you using it for a chicken dish. It's fine for chicken. I just think it's just such an undersung hero. So I'll stop geeking out now and leave you to it. There is my chopped tarragon, ready to go into our casserole. Right, so we finished over here browning off these sausages. Like I said, it wasn't our intention to cook them at all, and these sausages are so lean, there's barely any fat coming out of them at all. So I think for this particular recipe, there is a little bit. Okay, we'll try the mushrooms. It's not essential, but it does give the mushrooms a bit of a nice flavour. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to put these sausages on a side plate, ready for them to go into the casserole in a bit. Just going to turn off the heat while I'm not using it. Pop them on the side. They won't go bad or anything, don't panic. This whole exercise in the frying pan was really honestly to only give them some colour. If you don't have access to a frying pan, you can do exactly the same colouring exercise by browning them off on a high heat, top shelf in the grill, and just keep making sure that you turn them over as often as you can. Well done. Good, right, so we've now got the vast majority of our ingredients ready for our whole casserole. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to prepare the stock, which is the sauce that the casserole comes in. You may have been used to using a jar. I want to challenge you now. You don't have to buy jars. There's so many things in jars that we don't know of, preservatives, stabilizers, stuff to help food in transit and to be stored for a long time. And I think if you're cooking from fresh, not only do you get that amazing reward of this really nice home cooked dinner, but also you avoid a lot of ingredients that aren't really needed in a sauce. So for this one, we'll go through what is required, and then we'll go through some optional things. So what is required is some form of starch. So this in particular, I tried on my friend who is gluten intolerant over the weekend, and he had no repercussions. So I'm really chuffed with this. This is a sweet potato starch. I won't go into where we got it from right now, but I will promise later on in the week we'll put a story on Facebook and on Instagram of where we found these little treasures. You can use corn flour. We do exactly the same thing. I wouldn't use normal flour. We can use normal flour to thicken sauces, but for this particular casserole, I think it'd be great if we could use corn flour or the sweet potato starch if you can get hold of it. Okay. The next thing that you need is a really, really good vegetable stock. Now, I obviously have chosen a branded one here. That is not because we're snobs, that is because it was on offer and it was £1. And I think it came, how many pots came in here? 2, 4, 6. There were 6 pots in here, so it was a really, this has lasted ages and ages. Oh no, 8 pots even. Brilliant. So I'm honestly, if you want to get the supermarket's own brand, go for it. Excuse me. This is an example of a dry stock. What's really important is that you have a stock that you're happy with, so check the ingredients, just make sure that you're not allergic to anything. For me personally, I think the liquid ones are much better quality, but for this particular dinner, instead of using 2 liquid ones, I'm going to use one of these and one of these. So I'll take them out. So there's my stock ready to go. These 2 ingredients are totally optional. When you'll probably think I'm absolutely obsessed with sugar. I'm not. Will you excuse me 1 second? I'm not at all obsessed with sugar, but you will notice that when you're cooking for people, that if you add fat or if you add sugar, or in fact if you add alcohol to your dinners, people really go nuts for them. So there you go. There's a real top tip from yours truly to you. So you can leave it out if you want to, but if you want to really impress your family, then adding a bit of sugar is okay, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously we don't use sugar in this house, as I've said, so we're going to use maple syrup. And then the other optional ingredient is, if you see down here, some smoked paprika. Again, if you're allergic to peppers or anything like that, leave it out. It's absolutely fine. It's not going to make a huge difference. But for my particular recipe, I do like a bit of a dash of smoked paprika. Excellent. Okay, so let's crack on and make the stock. So what I want you to do is put in the stock cube, or 2 of your liquid ones. So don't worry, if you only have the solid version of the stock in a cube, that's absolutely fine. Use 2 of those. I'm just using 1 of each to prove that there's really not a lot of difference at all. The next thing we're going to pop in is some garlic. I would say 2 garlic cloves if you've crushed them yourself, or 2 teaspoons of garlic paste if you're using garlic paste and, like me, joined the revolution of hating crushing garlic, but that's just me. And then you then get to choose whether you want to add your optional sugar or not. I would say 2 dessert spoons is absolutely plenty. And then your smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon is absolutely fine. Wonderful. Right, so the next thing we need to do is get some water in here, because we're going to be mixing this up. You can see it in there. So I'm going to fill this all the way to the top. This is a, oh no, where is it? Oh, where is it now? It's a, okay, so I filled this up to 800 millilitres of water. Okay, so pretty full. Okay, so 800 ml of water, and just put that to one side for now. Okay, that's absolutely plenty. The next thing we need to do is make the starch base, which we're going to use our corn flour or our sweet potato flour from. To get a really nice non-lumpy gravy, as it were, or a stock, I would suggest getting a little Tupperware pot or a jam jar, something that's watertight that you can use to basically mix up the flour that we're going to use. Okay, so we're going to count it out together. It's this exactly the same for corn flour, so no panic at all. Just going to grab my teaspoons here. Okay, so can you see this all right? We're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that will do nicely. 5 will be absolutely plenty. This might seem like a lot, but the reason why it's 5 teaspoons is because when we've added in all of our vegetables that we haven't yet cooked, These are going to release so much amazing natural stock and natural waters that are in them anyway. So we need a fairly thick stock just so it's not so runny. I absolutely hate runny stew. I think it's disgusting. So we're going to make it flavoursome, we're going to make it fun, and make sure that we get a decent thickness to our stock before it goes in the oven. So with this, all you need to do is literally add in, you can either use some of the stock water or pop some tap water in there, and we're going to shake it all up. But before I do that, I'm just going to add 2, 3, 4 large pinches of salt, and if you want that in teaspoons, I'd say 2 heaped teaspoons would be plenty. Okay, so take some of your stock, pour it into the container. Don't fill it all the way to the top because you'll need to shake it around. Put your watertight lid on, so it could be in a jam jar or in a container, and literally shake it around. And while we're doing this, all of the starch will be mixing in with the fluid, and hopefully it won't leave any nasty lumpy bumpy bits. So if you're making a gravy from scratch, exactly the same rules apply. I just do it nice and quickly in one of these containers. Should we get going with our stock? Right. So what you want to do is make sure that as you're making the stock, you stir it evenly and quickly as you can. One of the things that will happen is that it will start to thicken, and we'll explain how that happens in a second. Thank you very much, Glamorous Assistant. Okay. You'll see that we only really use the measuring jug for the actual measurement. I'm not using it to cook in or anything. And you pour in your cornflour or sweet potato flour mix, and then we're going to put it on a full heat. Now, as soon as the heat goes on, I want you to gently stir, and as I'm gently stirring, this will magically start to thicken up, and I can have a little chat with you, which is really nice. So, just to recap, the reason why we're making stock is because it is a brilliant, full, flavoursome way of delivering meats and casseroles and all those kinds of things without tons of calories. If you want to do a classic stew, which is more sort of a watery stock than anything else, that's fine, that's totally your choice, but my particular recipe, just to warn you, has obviously got this starch in. Now, we're using sweet potato flour today, and that's because I like it, and it's just a brilliant alternative to corn flour. And as you can see, I'm just gently stirring it and making sure that everything is being evenly stirred. As it heats up, the stock that you've put in will start to disintegrate. So don't worry if you can still see the blocks of stock in there. They will, if I can catch it, there it is. So it will start to dissolve as the heat starts to turn up. So what's happening now is, as the heat is increasing, the starch molecules from your flour are getting really excited, and they're mixing in with the fluid, the water that we've put in all around it. And when it reaches a certain temperature, those molecules of starch, they burst, and as they burst, they release all of that amazing starchy qualities, and that gives us a really nice thick sauce. And that's how we end up with a sauce in general, is that these molecules, they burst and release all of their lovely sticky starch, which is amazing. So as we're getting on with our sauce, I'm going to try and multitask, even though I am male. Over in the corner there, I pre-peeled some potatoes and popped them in water. They're going to make the mash for our dinner. Please do not be scared. If you boil them for 20 minutes or 40 minutes, it really won't make much difference. The only thing you'll find difficult is if you overboil them. They will start to disintegrate when you try and drain the water. So I would, in general, just boil them for no longer than half an hour, but 20 minutes should be plenty, especially for smaller potatoes. Larger potatoes take longer. Half an hour is plenty. and you can put those potatoes on once you put your casserole in the oven, so they can just boil away. We're going to spoil ourselves, and we're going to put a dollop of cream and butter in the mash just to make it really nice and creamy, but you don't have to do anything like that, especially if you're on something like Slimming World where you're going to have to sin the sugar if you put that in anyway, and things like that. But honestly, get in touch if you have any challenges that you find, you know, for cooking for you or your family. Then drop us a line at dadsdodinner@outlook.com and we'll have a chat about it, no problem. So I'm going to keep talking as this stock is starting. Can you see it's now starting to change colour slightly, and that's because the whole mixture is starting to heat up a bit more. Should we just check on my sausages, please, dear? Lovely. So they're still plenty pink, so they're not cooked at all, and that's because they're going to go in the main casserole. So the main cooking will be done in the oven itself. So please don't stress when you were browning them off. There's no stress there in getting them cooked before they go in the casserole at all. I've chosen to have this dinner with cabbage. You can choose any vegetables you like, it's no big deal. I just think cabbage goes really well with this particular dinner, and yeah, just have fun, and please don't stress about it. I think I've said before, you know, if you're not enjoying this, then don't do it. And if you're one of those that's on your own today, or whether you're cooking for like a family of 8, again, you just adapt the recipe. If you do too much sauce, who cares? You can always put it in a Tupperware dish and save it till another time, and just make sure you do enough sausages for yourself. It's really no bother. Right, so if we have a look at this stock now, it's just starting to change consistency, and this is where I pick up your speed just slightly, just to make sure that all the stock is getting an equal amount of heat, and that's achieved by consistently moving the sauce. If you left this now, all the starch molecules would fall to the bottom of the pan, and you get a really horrible thick layer of dense starch and a really watery top to your stock. So I would suggest that you keep moving it as fast as you possibly can. You can actually probably see better through the camera than I can at the moment because it's getting quite steamy, but you can probably already tell that the consistency is changing, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. If you're doing a Spanish casserole, the main change is that they add tomatoes. You can use tin tomatoes if you prefer. I'm not particularly bothered. I think this is a really nice hearty English dinner that can be enjoyed all year round, but especially during winter when it's cold and I just want a really nice hearty meal to come home to. And what's really nice is that because most of it's done in the oven, you can do anything extra like your veg and your potatoes while it's being while you're waiting to be done. That stock's done. That looks absolutely brilliant. I'm going to just take it off the heat now. Fantastic. So you'll probably be saying to me, but Chris, isn't stock meant to be more like water? Well, as I mentioned before, you're absolutely right, but this particular recipe takes a lot of liquid from the vegetables that we're going to add, so it won't be this thick when you serve up your dinner, which is a bit more like a traditional casserole. Okay, I'm really happy with that. So we're going to get now the main meal done and in the oven. So I'm going to locate my dish, which, when I can remember where it is actually behind me. So I'm going to hold on to the camera while my beautiful assistant goes to get the casserole dish for me, which is over there. If there's anything I've forgotten, do let me know. We're going to get everything set up now and put in the oven so we can get going. Thank you very much, my dear. That's wonderful. Great. Okay. So first thing we need to pop in is the sausages. Okay. Then literally chuck in your veg as random as possible so that everything gets a chance to cook evenly. The onions, oh, this will be amazing. When the liquid from the onions comes out into the stock and it dilutes it a little bit, it'll give even more flavour to that vegetable stock that we've done. If you don't have vegetable stock, you can use a chicken stock instead. It'll just be a slightly different flavour, but will still be just as yummy, whereas I use vegetable stock for my particular recipe. We didn't end up frying the mushrooms off, so I'm literally just going to pop them on. Like I said, I'm not stressing about it. It would have been nice had it been nice. Really not a problem. And then our final pièce de résistance is our beautiful unsung hero, Tarragon. I hope you are encouraged by the fact that this obviously does not look very scientific at all, and that's because I don't want it to be. You know, we've all got jobs, we've all got stuff we've got to get on with when we get in, and kids getting off to ballet in my case, or football if you've got any young lads into footy. It's literally that scientific. Put everything we've prepared into a dish, and then we're going to pour the stock over. Try and make this bit as evenly as you can, but again, don't stress too much. But it does help if everything has been covered. Oh look at my spatula. Whoa. I'm going to get told off soon. I'm way too enthusiastic. I spoke to my mother today and she said, I'm going to buy a spatula, and I thought, uh-oh, I've gone on too much about the spatula. Oh well, I'm glad. They're brilliant. See, you wouldn't get that all out with a spoon, would you? Hashtag first world problems. Okay. Everything's covered. I'm really happy with that. That looks absolutely brilliant. If it wasn't particularly uncooked, I probably took in already. So what we're going to do with this now is we're going to cover it with tin foil. We're going to put it in the oven for 45 minutes on a 200-degree heat, and as soon as that's finished, you will have an amazing sausage casserole with mash and or chips or whatever you want to have it with. We're doing mash. And with some cabbage. So I will post some photos of our finished product later online. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, do let us know. Otherwise, it's bye from me until next time.